We didn't know that it was possible to hurt like this. We didn't know that it was possible to be kidnapped, to be raped like this. We didn't know it was possible to be abandoned, to die like this. What happened to us on that Shabbat was so far beyond the limits of our imagination that for the past year and 1 month, we have been searching for words. I am not sure that I have the precise words, but maybe I can manage to phrase the questions that we urgently need to ask, all of them, now. And that is essentially what I wish to say out of the love for the profession I chose, which has become my mission, out of a simple love for this country, out of my deep connection to this land and its people. We must ask the questions, both to try to get answers, but mainly to make sure that we never stop asking, because there is no revival for a place where even the questions are dead, because what has been broken here must be fixed. And to fix it, we need to know, and to know, we need to ask. The act of questioning is therefore the patriotic act these days, and it is not unnecessary to say this. The father of Hadar Cohen, a female observer soldier who fell at Nahal Oz, did just that about a month ago during the National Memorial Ceremony, when he stood on stage and said with a broken voice, "The blood of our daughters cries out to us from the earth. We will not forget and we will not tire. With the last ounce of strength, we will ensure that those responsible assume their responsibility." I saw him with tears in my eyes, and I understood. Of all the sins of those responsible for the disaster, of all the failures of the leaders who survived the disaster, there is no explanation for the sin of refusing to establish a state commission of inquiry, which would simply ask and investigate the most terrible disaster that fell upon us. I ask you, how can one replace a defense minister during a war but not set up a state commission of inquiry, the one tool that the law regulates and the public insists must be established to ask questions and get answers? How come that is not happening 1 year and 1 month after the biggest fiasco this country has ever seen? I checked. The Juggernaut Commission was established on November 21st, 1973, a month and a half after the outbreak of the Yom Kippur War, which it was established to investigate. The Kahan Commission was established on November 1st, 1982, a month and a half after the massacre at the refugee camps of Sabra and Shatila, which it was appointed to investigate. The Or Commission was established on November 8, 2000, a month and a week after the riots in the Galilee, which it was appointed to investigate. The Shamgar Commission was established on November 8, 1995, 4 days after the assassination of Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, which it was appointed to investigate. The refusal to establish a commission of inquiry to investigate how the catastrophe of October 7th occurred reduces with every passing day the chance of discovering the facts, unearthing the truth, and restoring public trust in those who make life and death decisions. You might well ask, of all the scandals and displays of indifference around us, why focus on this question? Because of the stubborn and cynical refusal, and because this refusal is not accidental, and mainly because it undermines the two pillars without which there will be no healthy and free society here. Those are truth and trust. Truth is the result of finding the facts and agreeing that these are indeed the facts. And trust in those who mediate those facts to us. Sometimes it's the scientist, sometimes the police officer or investigator, sometimes it is the reporter. We are supposed to rely on the mediators to supply the information, and we are supposed to trust the decision makers to use this information for the common good. You cannot know without trusting, and you cannot trust without knowing. Truth and trust. Every scientist here knows that you cannot perform research without believing in the existence of facts, which in turn create a truth that we can all believe in and rely on its agents. Granted, not all facts are created in laboratory conditions. Sometimes reality is in the eyes of the beholder. But in my years of work as a reporter, I have learned that much to the dismay of postmodernists, in the end, there are facts. The time now is 6:32 in the evening, and we are in Rehovot. The time was 6:29 when thousands of terrorists flooded the Gaza border. 6:39 when they raided Nir Oz. 6:56 when they reached Be'eri. 9 a.m. when the first IDF soldiers arrived at the kibbutz, suffered injuries and pulled back. 1:30 p.m. when an organized IDF force finally began fighting in the kibbutz. 102 people were murdered at Be'eri and 30 were kidnapped. Those are facts, lean and hard facts. So don't let the noise of there is no absolute truth confuse you. And more importantly, when truth is destroyed and trust is shattered, it doesn't happen accidentally. One cannot understand what happened to us on October 7th without understanding how truth and trust were shattered here, both in the month leading up to that Shabbat and after that Shabbat. No commission of inquiry that tries to investigate what happened to us that very Shabbat, what happened the night before at 8200 intelligence unit, or why wasn't there a single soldier in Nir Oz when the terrorists were murdering and kidnapping a quarter of the kibbutz, or how they reached Ofakim. No such commission investigating the October 7th events will help unless we understand what happened here until October 6th and what is still happening. Israeli society reached October 7th divided and fragmented. More accurately, someone worked on dividing us. Also through the judicial reform, which millions of Israelis saw as an attack on our democracy, the targets of which were carefully and clearly marked. The Supreme Court, the Attorney General, the civil service, the free press, almost all the gatekeepers were marked. And with them, the pillars of truth and trust. It goes hand in hand. The destruction of trust in the gatekeepers and the destruction of truth. With a mighty and lethal tool that is just a touch away on our mobile screen, social media, the place where truth died and facts lost to traffic. In fact, the facts were cancelled. When someone uploads a photo of allegedly post-riot Ben Gurion terminal the day after the protest arrived there, it's not difficult to prove that this photo was taken in Brussels 20 years ago. When someone spreads wild slanders about a Shin Bet officer who is married to a prominent figure, it is not difficult to prove that he did not meet Yahya Sinwar days before the massacre. The truth is that he fought bravely in Gaza during the last year. It is not difficult to prove, but no one cares about the proof. As someone once said, while the truth is putting its shoes on, lie can travel halfway around the world. And not just lie, also malice. That's how the pipeline works online. Everything extreme becomes viral, and everything hateful catches like a wildfire in a field of lies, because the lie is the virus and the web is its carrier. Almost every one of us find themselves trapped in an echo chamber that reverberates what the algorithm has identified as what we want to hear. Check out how many people believe that Ehud Barak hopes hundreds of bodies will float in the Yarkon River so that they will call him back to lead, despite him saying the opposite. How many people are sure that Aharon Barak is the demon because of whom the Supreme Court allowed October 7th, despite the fact that this wise man has not been on the bench for 18 years now? Yes, these echo chambers produce half-truths, repel noises that create healthy doubt, but they do also something else. The rival becomes a one-dimensional figure, essentially a target to shoot poisoned arrows at. The rival is the other, faceless and devoid of human dimension. Think of it. The man who won the elections in America on November 5th lost 4 years ago, and shocking facts came out about his role in inciting the Capitol riots. The 76 million Americans who voted for him now didn't really care. And those who stormed the Capitol on his behalf then were sure that really Trump won the elections and Biden really lost the elections and stole them. That's what they were told in their feed. The people who were there to certify the results, senators, law enforcement officers, were all stormed by a mob washed with lies and blinded by hatred, because the facts have been destroyed and trust has been shattered. And the people on that hill ceased to be seen as human. They were the enemy from within. There is no more we the people. No, we have therefore gathered around shared truths and common goals. Instead, there is an enemy from within. Sometimes it is called the deep state. Sometimes it's anarchists or Kaplanists who would be accused of insubordination and betrayal of the nation. The dynamic, make no mistake, this dynamic is double-sided. What works from right to left sometimes happens from left to right as well. The liberal side also knows how to label, condescend, cancel, and hate, and how quickly legitimate opposition to a hostage deal or support for maximizing the war achievements earns you an entry ticket to the cult of death, and how every religious person becomes a messianic figure, every prayer in the town square becomes a threat, and every attempt at reconciliation becomes a crime. No, I'm not trying to arrange an unholy balance here or some false symmetry. I'm trying to unravel the web of lies and hatred closing in on us. One that briefly seemed to unravel when the war broke out and the bickering paused due to the emergency situation. But the pause was brief and the quarrel resumed. So what do we do when the cannons go silent and hostilities are back to haunt us? Here's a possible formula. It might not be mathematically proven in any faculty of yours, but it could still work. Everything is up for debate except for anything that will shatter the possibility of the debate itself. It is okay, it is legitimate, it's even desirable to argue passionately for or against a hostage deal, occupation, annexation, settlements in the Gaza Strip, even a two-state solution. This free-flowing, robust, open discourse which consumes information and produces it, which delivers truth and nurtures trust, which we, journalists, are supposed to fuel with facts, criticism, and question marks. This discourse is the lifeline of a democratic society. It has costs, that's true. It is not fun to hear difficult questions when everyone wants that we will win together. So when we got hold of emails written by a female sergeant in the intelligence unit 8200 warning of a Hamas attack before October 7th, we asked ourselves when and how to publish. But we replied that it was our duty to publish, because blindness might be comforting, but it's extremely dangerous. Therefore, almost everything is permissible, almost always. Everything except harming the mechanisms that ensure discourse itself and endangering the gatekeepers who protect our basic freedoms, including the freedom to ask questions. Without those gatekeepers, the Supreme Court, the Attorney General, the free press, even a defense minister who is not a yes man, there would be no one to stop the tyranny of a powerful leader or a power-hungry government. Without them, we are left with a hollow democracy. Without them, we are left with a hollow democracy, anorexic even, with perhaps elections, but no freedom, essence, truth, or trust. That's why this part of the Israeli debate is, in my view, not symmetrical. There is right and wrong, and there are things that are dangerous and destructive. This is why the flags that were raised here until October 6th are critical after October 8th as well, and perhaps even more so, because they are supposed to ensure not just our physical survival, but a life worth living, a life of a free people in their land. Am Chofshi Be'artzo. The writer Edgar Keret once told of his mother, a Holocaust survivor. She lost her entire family in the camps and was left alone in the world at the age of 8. When Edgar was about 5, she took him to lunch at a Tel Aviv cafe. He was cranky, and she told him, "Look, Edgar, there are many people around us, holding forks and knives, and none of them intend to kill us. Let's call it a good day." In a way, this is the most accurate definition of Zionism. It saved us from those who persecuted and murdered us. The author Amos Oz explained it simply: Zionism aimed to bring us to a place where we stop dying and start living. And it succeeded. Israel won 7 wars. It will ultimately win this one too. The Zionist dream has been realized in the most basic sense, but every dream ceases to be flawless when it becomes reality. Anyone who ever got married knows it. Zionism could rescue us from pogroms and guarantee that we would stop dying. It cannot guarantee we will start living full, sane, really democratic lives. This is the second level that must be built atop the foundation of the Zionist dream. This, in my view, is our generation's mission and that of our children. From the depth of my heart, out of that great love for this place, I know that we must not give up on this second level. Indeed, it is less self-evident than the foundational level, because this second level requires asking tough questions. Asking, for instance, where exactly this war is going, how a hostage deal was torpedoed, and whether it is possible that someone in the Prime Minister's service stole and leaked classified documents to deflect pressure on the Prime Minister to get back the hostages. Yes, the scale of the tragedy in Gaza must also be questioned, and the fate of innocent civilians in Gaza who are dying in this war. Hamas brought this disaster upon them, but we will also have to live with its results, with our reflection in the mirror, and with our values we will have to live. The same values housed in this second non-trivial level. For me, it is clear that as journalists we have a role in maintaining this second level, simply because that's what we do. We ask questions all the time. This role was ever so clear to me when I sat with 2 senior members of the hostages negotiating team. Both took a risk in agreeing to meet with my colleague Naama Peri and I. Both burned with frustration when describing hostages whose time has run out, and the moment when they realized that someone high up did not truly want a deal. It is okay, of course, to oppose a deal at all costs, but it is not okay to believe those who say we will do everything while doing otherwise. Our role was as clear to me when we heard a phone conversation between Dr. Tamar Schlesinger and Michael and Amalia, the young children hiding in a closet in the safe room in their home in Kibbutz Kfar Aza. Their parents were murdered. Their sister Abigail was kidnapped. And Dr. Tamar, a clinical social worker, promised them she wouldn't leave them until the soldiers arrived. And it took them so long to arrive. And Tamar took care of Michael and Amalia on the phone for almost 12 hours. When we broadcasted those recordings, I understood once again something about our role, to shine light on moments of grace, but also to expose the horrors and keep asking the questions. These questions, my friends, are not just about the questions themselves. They are the idea of casting doubt. At times, they embody suspicion. They are the act of challenging. They are democracy's state of being. We must ask in order to know to understand, and understand to choose. Certainly, in a state whose emergency status can create pretexts for silencing and excuses for weakening all mechanisms of scrutiny and gatekeeping. Look at how the police is collapsing, how those in power try to intimidate the Attorney General, how academia is under attack, how clear and obvious the governmental effort is to harm those who question and seek to investigate and try to know more. So, is there a light blinking from anywhere in the future? I had the privilege of looking into the future this year through the eyes of our daughter's firstborn. His name is Adam, and he is half a year old. One great-grandfather of his was born in Argentina after his parents fled Ukraine. One great-grandmother of Adam was born in Uruguay after her parents fled Hungary, and most of their family perished there in the Holocaust. One grandfather of Adam was born in 1948 and fought in the 6 Days War. The other grandfather was an armored corps officer in the First Lebanon War. Adam's mother was also an armored corps officer, as was his father, who was seriously injured during Operation Protective Edge in 2014. When Adam was in the womb, his father was fighting as a reservist in Khan Yunis. When Adam was born, Israel was still at war. This war will end one day in a victory. There is a victory photo, and there will be more. But in my victory photo, I see Adam wearing shorts, riding a bicycle on a trail near Be'eri, or in the green fields between Nirim and Nir Oz, coming across a memorial or an old sign and asking what exactly happened there in that October. Someone will tell him about the tragedy, but also how we rose from it, how we turned a moment of fracture into a moment of grace, how we made sure to ask what happened and to ensure it never happens again. Neither the tragedy from without nor that from within. I'm dying to meet Adam at 20-something, not just because he will be devastatingly handsome. Also, who knows, maybe he will break tradition and never climb on a tank. But there's one promise we owe Adam and his generation, that we will ensure the second floor of this house where he can live for his country, not just die for it. It sounds far-fetched, I know. But anyone who heard Dr. Tamar on the phone with Michael and Amalia, anyone who witnessed all those who rose to the occasion this year with or without uniforms, knows there is room for optimism and hope. I cannot promise it, but I hope that Adam grows up in a more sane, inclusive, Jewish and democratic state. He may have to fight for it after all, but I wish he never stops asking. One last word there are 101 sisters and brothers of ours still held hostages in Gaza. They all have loved ones who are waiting for them. We should ask, not only pray, we should demand and take action so that they all come back now. Thank you all very much.